So how do we set our child up for success when following instructions? Okay, number one, and this may seem obvious, but it truly is something we need to be reminded of. Make sure you have your child's attention when you're giving them an instruction. If they're looking at their video game, or they're doing their crochet, or building their Lego, or whatever it is that they like to do, and you're talking to them, make sure they stop and pay attention. It may be that you have to stop stirring the pot in the kitchen and go into the living room to talk to them so that you can see if they are paying attention or not, rather than calling to them from the other room. Ensuring you have their attention is super important because otherwise they may not even process anything you say. As a parent starting out, it is your responsibility to ensure you have your child's attention. You can praise them when they do pay attention immediately and help the child think about their own thinking. Wow, when I called you that time, you looked up from your Lego and listened carefully right away. We also broke the instruction into chunks, and look how well you followed it when you gave it your full attention, and we broke it down into manageable steps. With time, your child will learn to recognize that when they use their inhibitory control, sustained attention, working memory, and emotional control executive function skills, such as when they stop playing with their Lego to look up and focus on what you're saying, even when they'd rather ignore you and keep on playing, things actually go much more smoothly. This can help them down the line when they're older and their phone is giving notifications during geography class. They can think about their own thinking, and through extensive experience with reflexive questioning, listen to their own inner voice for self-regulation, which may tell them, when I'm looking at my phone, I don't learn as well because I'm distracted. I will put my phone on silent and keep it in my bag so I can be successful. You can also compliment your child by saying things like, I know your sister's music in the other room, or the smell of the pizza we're going to eat can be distracting, but I am so impressed with how you are staying focused and not letting those things stop you from completing your task. Awesome job moving to a more ideal space, or initiating putting on your noise-canceling headphones so you can stay focused. We've already talked about breaking information into reasonably sized chunks. As you practice this skill, you will get a much better sense of what is an appropriate amount of information to give your child in one go. And then you'll be able to make sure you're not surpassing that. You will learn to recognize if you are bombarding them with information. You can then stop to break it down. I love having kids repeat back the instruction, especially if it's an oral instruction, asking them, so what did mommy just say? Or what did daddy just tell you to do? Can you repeat it back to me? That is often helpful because you can find out, hey, did my kid miss a part? Do I need to emphasize this again? Even if your child did remember all of the parts of the instruction, going through that process of repeating it back gives yet a greater chance of being successful and remembering and processing all of it, because we know that walking into another room can entail dealing with a wide range of potential distractors that could throw them off course. With a younger child, if you need them to do something involving multiple steps, maybe they're going to do the first one or two things, and then they come back to you and you tell them the next part that needs to be done, because this reflects their working memory and language processing capacity. So embrace this and set your child up for success by only giving them the amount of information they can reasonably handle. If your child is able to read, you could consider writing down the steps involved in their task, especially if it's something that they need to remember for half an hour from now or something like that. They're not going to do it right away. Then use reflexive questioning with them to guide them through the task, giving them as much independence as they can handle while still being successful. Maybe they're old enough to be left home alone and you're going to be running out to the store and in 20 minutes they need to remember to do something. If it's written down and if a timer goes off to remind them when to do it, then they can refer back to the written instructions and are way more likely to stop and actually do the task when they hear the alarm. And if reading is hard for them, consider leaving the information in a recorded voice message that they can listen to, even listen to several times if they need to. Imagine you hear your child with DLD who has well-developed executive function skills and a strong inner voice for self-regulation talking with the neighbor as they get their first pet sitting job. And your child says to the neighbor, "Would you mind writing out or sending me a voice note of all the steps I need to remember to do each day when I take care of Fluffy? Then I can refer to it each day to make sure I've done everything." The child may have thought to themselves, when I have all the steps recorded, I can go back and reread or re-listen to them each day before I leave to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. This is a strategy I will use to make sure I'm successful. I can be a very responsible pet sitter this way. What a great way to take control and set themselves up for success. This child recognizes their areas of weakness, knows which strategies are helpful, and makes a plan for how to use the strategies to ensure they get the job done well. We talked in the last sublesson about word order and temporal words like before you do whatever, do whatever. We used the example of before you get dressed, take out the garbage. And sometimes those time words are not processed well or are not understood at all by our kids. So, being mindful of the way that we phrase our instructions and the order of the words can help your child be successful. You can ask yourself, did I use the word if in my instruction and confuse them? Or did I use temporal words like before? If so, consider either rephrasing or, and I like this one a lot, going with your child as they follow the instruction to help them be successful. Talking specifically about those challenging words within the instruction so they can have practice with that type of wording with your gentle assistance, and then they can be successful. For our younger kids, and even for some of our older ones, we want to be really mindful of prepositions. So just like we were saying before, those are our position words, words like between, below, above, behind. Sometimes our kids don't get those words, or they might have been successful if there was only one step, but there's so much else going on that preposition, it just flew out the window and your child didn't remember it. So they put their favorite socks on top of the dresser instead of in their dresser like you had said, because they mixed up on top of and in, and then the socks fell under the bed and your child can't find those beloved socks later when you're in a rush, all because of how you phrased your instruction or their confusion, with the meaning of the preposition. Being mindful of the number of prepositions that you're using and making sure that your child understands them is really important. When it's not instruction following time and you're just relaxing with your child, you can play games to work on prepositions. For example, you could play hide the toy game with younger ones, where you take turns hiding a favorite toy and then using prepositions, those position words, to identify where it was hidden. Oh, you put your Elmo toy below the swing. I hid it between the slide and the sandbox. You can also model this in your daily routines, such as clearing the table. The mustard goes in the fridge. The garbage goes under the sink. The pot goes behind the bowl, and so on. As you're going about your own tasks, you can also narrate what you're doing, emphasizing those instructions. I also like to be silly with younger kids and do something unexpected, like set the table and put the plate under the table instead of on the table. Then you can make a big deal of saying, "Oh, silly mommy, I put the plate under the table. Oh, I need to put it on the table." This gets kids paying attention in a relaxed, silly way giving them more exposure to challenging position words, and thus helping them have a better chance of following instructions with those prepositions in the future. With a school-aged child, you can have a conversation about following instructions. It's best to have this conversation when you're not directly asking them to do something, so find a time when it's just a time to focus on developing executive function skills. You could say, I've noticed that when I have a lot of steps I need to follow, it helps me to break them down into reasonable chunks. What do you think would help you follow all the steps? And if your child isn't sure, you could say something like, remember when we made cookies last week and we forgot the sugar? I think that was because we had too much other stuff going on and we were just blazing through the recipe. Maybe next time we should organize the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients first. Then we could check off each one on our list to be sure we dumped it into its bowl. Before shaping the cookies, we could also review the instructions one more time to be totally sure we didn't miss anything. I think that breaking the instruction down into smaller chunks and continually monitoring our progress will help us a lot, don't you? Then we won't end up with bland, sugar-free cookies next time. Maybe we should also make sure that the TV or the radio is turned off so we limit our distractions and have a better chance of staying focused. Then, later on, when it's time for your child to work on their science report, you can refer back to your success following the recipe for making cookies. And you can use reflexive questioning to help them come up with their own plan so they can be successful in following their instructions using their improved executive function skills. Your child can learn to plan, organize, self-monitor, and self-evaluate during daily home activities when you take the time to think about thinking together and consistently use reflexive questioning.